Now, to me, the weird thing is, like, why would you bother? Like, why do you need to improve the technology? What was wrong with it? And I think the interesting thing here is that there is a social dynamic to technologies that isn't often considered, especially around disability. One of the reasons people like dogs is because it keeps people away. That is, you're not supposed to talk to the dog if it's working. And that way it preserves much of their kind of privacy. Because let me tell you, when you're blind, you're famous. Everybody's like, so, what do you see when you dream? And how do you find the urinal? And, you know, you're just waiting for the cross signal, right? When you have the cane, people come out of the woodwork. They're always wanting to help you. And that's actually the mode of life I've chosen. That's why I have a cane and not a dog. The dolphin man, I realized, was even in a more enforced isolationism. And I understand it to a way, and I have some sympathy for it, because I'll tell you this right now. There are two things that fall out of blindness that are actually the really crippling elements. One is embarrassment, and the second is boredom. Those are the real crippling elements. Because mobility is not a big problem if you're willing to bump into shit. Or if you're willing to laugh at yourself, or if you're willing to actually talk to people who come out of the woodwork. And let me tell you, the people who tend to come out of the woodwork are really wonderful and usually have the lowest inhibitions of everybody else. That's why they came to talk to you. So you get a lot of weird, interesting stories. And the economy of trust is such that when they take your elbow and guide you across the street, they feel you've indulged a trust in them that they must reciprocate, so they tell you something about themselves, something they might not tell other people. So as a writer, it has given me no endless source of material, and that's why I don't have a dog, and that's why I don't. So the second technology that I use is this computer program called JAWS. My cane helps me deal with the embarrassment issue because I deal with people all the time. JAWS is what helps me deal with boredom. Boredom was the one I was most worried about. Because when I was first told I was going blind when I was 18, and it took like over 10 years for me to lose my sight, I heard a guy on the radio with the same thing, and he said that basically all he does now is sleep all day and listen to hockey games when they're on the radio. And I was really afraid of that. I was more afraid of that than unemployment. So I took up a life as a writer, and the thing that allowed me to do it was this thing called JAWS. And it's a voice software technology that, you know, basically isn't much more powerful than the ones you probably have in your Mac. It can read my Word to me, it reads the internet to me, it reads my email to me, it reads my desktop icons to me. It's very powerful. I can speed it up. You wouldn't understand it because I listen to it so quickly now. The way you speed read, I speed listen. The sad thing is, it is still Stephen Hawking. Now, you write a 110,000-word book listening to Stephen Hawking read it back to you sentence by sentence. The first thing you do when you get this technology is what anybody in this room would do. I know you would all do this. The first thing you do is you write some softcore pornography, and then you listen to what it would be like to have Stephen Hawking read you smut. And it's funny. And then you're like, wow, I could be a writer. This is funny. And then you set off to write your memoir about how you went blind and how you got it all wrong. When I started writing the book, there was this funny thing that happened, and that was this voice came out of me. They say, find your voice as a writer. Well, this voice came out of me. I'd never written funny stuff before. And I didn't intend to write a funny book about going blind, but I did. And part of it was because I was in a wrestling match with this computer voice. Some critics of my books have said, he's got a very peculiar sentence style because it sounds like somebody sitting on a bar stool beside you. And I realized, actually, it's because it is somebody on a bar stool beside you, because I've never heard my voice in my head. I've only had this computer voice read it back to me. It is said aloud. And one of the things you do when you have Stephen Hawking talking to you all day is you try and make him sound more human. So you don't use technical words like vomit, you use yark, because it's funnier sounding. And it's funny to make Stephen Hawking say, I had a massive yark, right? And that's where my voice came from. And so I realized that part of my voice, this oral, slack jaw, kind of casual voice, is me trying to make this computer sound more human all the time and sound more like I would want it to sound. I've always been a believer that one of the ways you discover stuff is that you go where you're unwanted. And I think that's true of anything when it comes to design, writing, anything creative, is you're supposed to go where you're not welcome. And so I decided I wanted to write a movie. Because I don't watch movies anymore. I listen to them and I thought, who writes movies if they can't see? And I've been approached by some people to adapt my book into a film, or to find somebody to adapt it. And I said, let me try. They're like, well, I don't know. There's the, issue. So I banged out a draft, and they submitted it, and I got into this thing called the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, which is apparently this very coveted thing. I knew nothing about it. People were weeping when they were there. It was like 12 of us, and they're like weeping, "Thank you for taking me in." I'm like, "Where the fuck are we? We're on a mountain." Like, yeah, we're bumbling along. What do you care? I had no idea. It was very embarrassing. Here's what they do. They bring 12 young screenwriters up to work with 12 veterans. They put you up in these cabins in Utah, in Sundance, on the ski resort. And it's like an Agatha Christie novel. You all like get like a little cabin in the woods, thank you, Bob. And then in the morning, you all gather in this lodge, and you eat together, and you work for 14 hours on your script, one-on-one with a veteran. And you do this for 6 days. And then after dinner, you wait to see if somebody gets murdered, and then who's going to get the film rights. It's really awesome. It's an amazing thing. I learned more in 6 days than I did in my entire university career from these guys. And so, they brought me up there, and it was really weird because the first night they brought me up, it was dark. Now, I see nothing in the dark. Like, I can see lights right now, but I can see nothing in the dark. And they guided me up to my cabin, and I don't know where I was. Like, I just remember walking up this path, and they're like, "Okay, 8 o'clock is breakfast at the lodge. Do you need us to guide you down?" I got my cane. I'm Canadian. It's the woods. What can go wrong? So I went to bed. I got up in the morning, and I opened the door, and there was 3 feet of snow that had fallen all night, and the path was gone. And my cane gave back no acoustics off this snow. So I started going down. I knew I had to go down, and I started heading for a brook. I could hear water. I get to the thing. It's like, water, good. Bloosh, with my cane. Fine. Okay, so there's a lodge around here somewhere. So I go over this way, bloosh. And I go this way, and bloosh. And I go that way, and bloosh. And 4 angles adds up to a moat, right? And it's like, I am in a moat. There's a flash flood, and I am surrounded by water, and I am now on Ryan's little Gilligan Island on a mountain in Utah. And I checked, and it's like, fuck it if there isn't water all around me. And so what do? Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you wait, which is basically you say screw it. And then about an hour later, I see these smears of lights coming towards me, and a very large truck pulls up, sploosh, and pulls up, and it's blaring mariachi music, which apparently they like in Utah. And this very small Eastern European woman climbed down, and I know she was small because breath around my elbow. And she walked up to me, and she said, "Are you lost?" And I'm like, "I am so lost." I don't suppose you see many of us wandering around here, but I'm very lost. And she said, "Well, what are you trying to do?" And I said, "I'm trying to find the lodge. There's some lodge around here. Can you show me where it is?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll take you. What do you want me to?" I'm like, "Here, I'll take your elbow. Let's go." So she did, and she walked me 5 feet that way and opened the door. Good, 3 minutes. What I would finish with is basically to say that I'm here to defend lo-fi. Lo-fi is something that is still, I think, much more complicated than we imagine. And the elegance of my stick is still the thing that marvels me. It's very hard to improve upon simplicity. As I go out and travel into the world and do my other things, I take it with me, and I hope that in the future they don't put a touch screen on it. Thank you.